The Premier League is just 6 weeks away, and I'm going to be making my way too early Premier League predictions for the 2023-2024 Premier League season. I'm going to be predicting 1st through 20th, and I'm going to give a quick little reason. I'm going to try to move through this because a lot of transfers haven't been done. Some moves have been made, but based on the current feel of the transfer market and everyone's kind of status going into next season, I'm going to make these predictions to the best of my ability. If you like the video, consider giving it a thumbs up and consider subscribing because I'm going to be putting out a lot of footy content throughout the transfer window and beyond. So stay tuned for that and stay tuned to see if I end up getting these way too early predictions right. So let's get into the video. 20th, Luton Town. Luton Town doesn't have an enormous budget. They hardly have a stadium. And as much as I want to root for them, it's pretty clear that they're going to finish dead last this upcoming season. Their transfer budget is hardly like top players' wages. I mean, I feel as if probably Kevin De Bruyne earns more than what they'll be able to spend this summer. And even if they do spend this summer, that's never a guarantee. So they're going to have to fight tooth and nail to stay in the league, but I just don't see it happening. 19th, Sheffield United. Sheffield United, another team that I feel like has some fight, has some grit, but is going to have to revert to, parking the bus and trying to squeeze out 1-0 wins, and I just don't see them being able to have the firepower or the depth to keep up, a couple injuries, and they could be in some bad shape, and I don't know too much about their manager, but he doesn't strike me as somebody that's going to, tear the Premier League up per se. 18th, Wolves. Wolves just lost Ruben Neves to a big money move to Saudi Arabia, and now that he's gone, I don't see them investing this money wisely. They've missed on some pretty big transfers in the last few years. Joel Moutinho's also leaving, and it kind of feels absent at Wolves. I don't see the direction. I don't see how this team will kick on, and I don't see where the star power is coming from. I think they're going to have a really tough season, and ultimately I think that bad performance after bad performance is just going to pile on, and eventually Lopetegui will get sacked, and whoever comes on board won't keep him up. 17th, Nottingham Forest. I like Steve Cooper. I like the vibe of Nottingham Forest. They've won a European Cup in their history, so seeing them in the Premier League is always a joy. I don't see a world in where they're really thriving this time next year. I think they'll be in the Premier League, but just barely. I think that they're going to invest some money this summer, probably not as much as last summer and not as many signings either, but I just see maybe a decent start, but eventually just form, injuries. I don't see them really having the personnel to have a push to mid-table or Europe or even lower mid-table. I think they're going to be battling relegation, and they'll be safe with maybe a game or two to go, or maybe even on the last day. 16, Bournemouth. Bournemouth appointed Andoni Iraola from Rayo Vallecano. He seems like a shrewd appointment, but I feel like the Bournemouth owners, I don't see them spending enough in the market to provide him with quality players. Not to say that Bournemouth doesn't have quality players. With Bournemouth, they're the type of team that comes up in the Premier League for a season or two, and they try to stay in, but ultimately they always drop out. 15th, Everton. Everton, I mean, what more is there to say? It's pretty nasty play. They've stayed up, so they're going to retain the likes of Onana. I just feel like, I don't know, the tactics are outdated and they've been struggling for years, so I think they'll finish around the same place. Maybe one transfer hits, but however many other transfers they make probably won't, so that's my guess. 14th, Crystal Palace. Crystal Palace were playing really good football under Roy Hodgson to finish out the season, but it's Roy Hodgson and it's Crystal Palace. And with Zaha gone, most likely, I don't see how they're going to really improve. So I think they're going to get a little worse, probably. I could see individually, Eze or Michael Elise becoming better players, maybe having a higher output. But as a squad, I feel like they're going to suffer, and I don't think they're going to be able to replace Wilfried Zaha on the left flank. There might be a relegation scare in there. Roy Hodgson will get sacked, and they're going to finish 14th. 13th, Fulham. Marco Silva, Fulham, amazing campaign. Coach of the Year candidate last season. Really amazing job, but the season ultimately finished with that FA Cup loss to United where Mitrovic ended up getting suspended for a set amount of games, and Silva was also sent off. It really felt like their whole season momentum just came to a screeching halt right there. So going into this season, I mean, Paulinho's great. They want to retain him. There's some interest from West Ham and some other clubs, but I just don't see a world in where Fulham will be able to do it again, let's just say. I think they'll have good moments throughout the season. They'll probably get some big wins, and I think they'll be mid-table, and then once again will kind of fall behind the Europe race, and I just don't see them being all that high up. I could see them just kind of being average this season as opposed to the electric start they had last year. 12th, West Ham. So I have West Ham 12th because I feel like they're going to struggle similarly in the Europa League as to how they struggled in the Conference League this past season in terms of being able to put up a competitive effort in the Premier League and being able to compete for a higher position on the league table. I think they're going to want to win the Europa League or at least go a little further because realistically there's not a huge chance for West Ham to qualify for the Champions League through league position. Yeah, I know next season the top 5 is going to qualify for the Champions League. I think they're going to push for Europa League, and I think it's going to burn them a bit, and they'll miss out on the Champions League for the season after next, and they'll also finish 12th. 11th, Burnley. I think Burnley is going to surprise a lot of people. Burnley demolished the Championship. They scored over 100 points, and Vincent Kompany completely changed the identity of the club. From a boring, grubby Deutsch ball team to Man City light. Burnley has been incredible to watch. I've watched some highlights. I haven't watched full games, but with the performances, the results, and just the highlights I've seen, they look like a really entertaining and enthralling team. That opening day fixture of Man City at Turf Moor is going to be an all-time Premier League classic. I could just feel it. Regardless of the result, it's going to be a heck of a watch. So I think they're going to perform really well, and I think that a lot of people are going to be surprised with how Burnley looks under Vincent Kompany. So that's why I have them 11th. 10th, Brentford. I see Brentford struggling early this season, but as the season progresses and Ivan Toney's ban gets lifted, I think they're going to kick into gear. They're going to have some games that they should probably win, but they're not going to because they lack the firepower. The likes of Brian Mbeumo could provide some support in the early parts of the season, but I don't see them investing too much more in their offensive line. So they're going to have to wait till Ivan Toney's back. I think it's going to kind of keep them from being as competitive as they like to be because I see a lot of these players taking an additional step, like as a unit and individually, but I feel like they're just going to be kind of unbalanced with the lack of Toney. It's just going to cause the team to have some struggles in front of goal. So that's why I have them 10th. 9th, Aston Villa. Unai Emery is incredibly underrated by people all across England because this man is a Europa League merchant. He is to the Europa League what Don Carlo Ancelotti is to the Champions League. He is to the Europa League what Real Madrid is to the Champions League. He is a menace. And I know there's criticisms from his tenure at Arsenal or even just generally how he's performed in the league with teams in Spain, but he also had Aston Villa 3rd on the form table from when he took over. Like if the season was Emery's starting date to when the season ended, Villa would be 3rd and they would have Champions League football. That kind of new manager bounce was really able to kind of allow Emery to mold the squad in his image. Do I think that they'll improve from last season? Maybe on like a finer level, yes, but overall, in the grand scheme of things, I don't see Aston Villa moving up that much higher from where they were last season. So yeah, 9th. 8th, Tottenham. Tottenham fans, I know Ange Postecoglou is extremely exciting, but it's Tottenham. Let's be honest here, Tottenham isn't a team that can really bounce immediately from such a loss of a season. Tottenham is a team that is more of a process. They're at a point where Harry Kane is either going to run out his contract and leave Tottenham then, and he'll be able to go to, say, Bayern or Man United or Real Madrid on a free, but I have a feeling that Real Madrid or somebody might make a move for him. Even if they don't, it's still Tottenham. I am excited to see Ange Postecoglou in this league, and I think he will do well, but I do think that there's going to be some growing pains with the squad. The likes of, Kulishevsky, phenomenal player. amazing, pivotal to Spurs even, a great deal this summer. But who do you have play in place of him? Is it Richarlison? Mora's gone. And I don't think, honestly, you could put, say, someone like Udogie there yet. Yeah, but Tottenham, honestly, I just don't see them doing it this season. I think they're going to finish 8th. 7th, Brighton. I think Brighton is going to have a good season despite getting rummaged. They are getting picked clean, and the likes of Sedo, McAllister, Levi Colwell, they're all leaving the club. McAllister's confirmed, Caicedo's rumored, Colwell might stay at Brighton, but I still see them having a good season. I think De Zerbi's a truly great coach in terms of working with what he's got and getting the most out of his current pool of players. Those losses in midfield are going to hurt them quite a bit, and I think they'll just stagnate. I think they'll improve in other areas of the pitch. They might sign a forward or two or some more depth in their squad to be able to maintain that position. I also think that Bart Verbruggen, who they're signing, is an amazing goalie to sign. We know that the whole situation happened with Robert Sanchez, and he's been effectively dropped from the squad, and now Jed Steele was playing in goal. And honestly, if he wasn't playing in goal, there'd probably be a couple more points on Brighton's total from this past season. So I see them kind of staying right at 7th, basically. 6th, Chelsea. I think they'll pull off a bit of a great escape here. A lot of these players that they've sold were on big money. Hakim Ziyech, Mendy, Koulibaly, they're all gone, and they're effectively just dead weight. Then you have Mount and Havertz leaving, big money transfers who were looking for a lot of money, but also they made a profit on Mason Mount and only made a slight loss on Kai Havertz, who's been there for effectively 3 or 4 seasons now. And at the end of the day, winning a Champions League in that time frame, that loss is already negated and it doesn't matter. But I think that the likes of Nkunku will do really well. I think they'll sign somebody important in midfield, whether it's Rice or Caicedo or Lavia. They'll sign somebody who will partner with Enzo really well. And I could just see, once all the players have been sold on, I could see Todd Boehly kind of picking up 1 to 2, maybe 3 key players who could kind of round out that squad and make it a lot more entertaining as a complete unit. So I think they'll have a good season ultimately. It'll take a while. It's going to be a slow burn for Chelsea fans. I think it's going to be pretty rough until like the halfway point, and then after Christmas and Boxing Day and the turn of the year, I just see Chelsea kind of picking up the pace, and they'll finish strongly at 6th, and they'll finish with some Europa League. So if they could do that, that's a good season for them, I'd say. 5th, Manchester United. Man United fans, you could slate me all you want. You could say, oh, we're going to sign this guy or that guy. I just don't see a world in where United is going to play at the same high level. I mean, they need a new center back, and they could obviously get a bunch of players to round out the squad. This could completely change my sentiment, but I just think that, this crop of players, put them in the Champions League, put the most pressure on them to, compete, invest even more money, and I just think they're going to capitulate a little. I think they'll kind of move backwards a bit because, De Gea is gone, more than likely, and if you keep De Gea, you're in an even worse spot. But B, adding in a new goalie, while it is exciting, it could be somebody like Onana, who's, I'd say, already world-class and would maybe slot into that team perfectly. But even still, that player has got to specifically adjust to the Premier League and has to adjust to their squad members. And while it could work, I mean, Lisandro Martinez and Onana played together before, and that wouldn't necessarily be a concern, but I just feel like with some of their players, the Martials, the Sanchos, the Dalos, the Luke Shaws, the rotational aspects of United, they're going to have to play more because of the Champions League, I don't think are really up to snuff. So I think they're just going to they'll do well throughout the start of the season, but as the Champions League drags on, as those results happen, they're going to kind of reach themselves at a point where they're kind of losing games that they shouldn't. They're drawing games that they also shouldn't. So that's why I have them 5th. 4th place, Arsenal. Arsenal are losing 2 key midfielders. They had a great season. With Partey and Xhaka leaving, you need replacements for those guys. But the types of players I'm seeing them linked to, Declan Rice, obviously they've signed Kai Havertz. Moyes was kind of linked at times. Lavia's linked at times. I just don't see a world where they are necessarily going to improve by adding these players. I think adding Kai Havertz is a huge risk. I think losing both Partey and Xhaka in the same window, regardless of who you bring in, just losing that core is a huge risk as well. I still don't trust them at the back. I don't think Gabriel is that good of a player. Ramsdale is class, I would say. I think Ben White is also okay. He's good. You're going to have Saliba and maybe Gabriel there, maybe Saliba and Ben White. I know they're close to signing Timber, and if they do sign Timber, that would be a good signing. But I just feel like Arsenal, this is such a young squad, and a lot of these players don't have Champions League experience whatsoever. And we saw how it went with the Europa League. They wanted the Europa League bad. Arsenal wants a title bad because it would mean a lot to the fan base. And naturally, you should try to win every competition you compete in, but it kind of destroyed their Premier League hopes last season. I mean, Saliba got injured, and then he was out for the most crucial games of the season, and they lost points when it mattered. And that is psychologically damaging to an extent, but also it is reflective of the situation with Arsenal. They had, I think, the youngest squad last season, or like the joint youngest squad in the whole Premier League. So it's a team that doesn't have the experience of playing in the most hotly contested matches in Europe in the middle of the week against the toughest opposition. And I think with the players they're adding, Kai Havertz, for example, he'll provide some versatility, but is it going to be a good type of versatility? That remains to be seen. So I think Arsenal is just going to struggle with Europe, and I think that the types of players they're recruiting aren't particularly fantastic for them. Third place, Liverpool. I know I have Liverpool third. I had them first for last season, so this is just me, knock on wood. I'm just here kind of trying to reverse my superstition and hope that by saying that they finished third, that they do maybe, or they don't and finish higher. But anyways, why do I have Liverpool third? Everybody watched that stretch towards the back end of the last 10 or so games. Liverpool really turned it on for 9 or 8 of those games and were winning every game and looked not necessarily the sharpest, but looked like that old Liverpool that could just go out there and get the win when it mattered most. I think McAllister is a phenomenal recruitment. I think Thuram, if we get him, another great signing. Romeo Lavia was linked today. Don't know how I feel about him. Gravenberch, don't know how I feel about him either. I just want Klopp to get back, but I think even without Klopp getting back, the likes of Luis Diaz and Diogo Jota having a full preseason and being able to be there from the jump, and hopefully more midfield investment, and the likes of Bajcetic coming back from his injury. Curtis Jones had a good run. Trent's going to be more of inverted fullback /6, so he might be playing more in a midfield position while we're attacking. It's exciting stuff, and I think Mo is raring to go, and we'll see who Liverpool decide to sign before the window shuts. And I think that Klopp has a good launching pad to kind of go into next season. I think a lot of these players can really develop and have a phenomenal go next season, but I think it's going to take some time, and it'll take some key signings. So we'll see if those signings go through. I'm operating under the expectation that they're going to sign at least a few more players that are going to round out the squad and allow Klopp to have some good options, but I think they're going to finish third regardless. Second place, Newcastle United. Newcastle fans, I got to give it to you. You guys really went through everything. I mean, Newcastle was worse than Sunderland at a point when I was watching. That was a big relegation rivalry, Newcastle and Sunderland. It was absolutely shocking. But you look at the state of the clubs now. Sunderland signing Jobe Bellingham, and Newcastle signing Sandro Tonali from AC Milan. I mean, Tonali's a phenomenal signing. They're linked to Tino Livramento as well now, Newcastle. they'll probably sign a few more players, and they'll have a very, very entertaining squad in the Premier League. How do I think they'll do in the Champions League? I don't know. I hope Newcastle does well for their sake, but I could see them, maybe losing out in an early knockout when they shouldn't, just kind of getting caught off guard by the opposition. But I think they're going to absolutely boss the Premier League and finish second. But first place should be obvious. Man City. They'll win it all. It's no surprise. They might even repeat the treble or do the quad, honestly, which would be quite the shame. But Man City linked to, Gvardiol, Declan Rice, quality players. Obviously, Gundogan and Bernardo Silva have left. Bernardo Silva still kind of in a gray area, I should say. He hasn't officially left, but Gundogan officially at Barcelona. Kyle Walker linked to a move to Bayern Munich. I just think that City will take that money, invest it wiser than anyone in the league could, and they'll get some great players who are going to help them and just put them in a position where, they could do everything. They could win every competition they're a part of. They can compete for everything. Haaland's there still. Akanji had an amazing season. Ake too. Ruben Diaz is still there. You still have Ederson. It's just tough to compete with Man City when they just can basically go out and buy whoever they want, and most players want to go play for them. So I think they'll make some major signings, and that'll only strengthen their squad, and I think they'll be competing for the quad next season. Those are my Premier League predictions for the 2023-2024 season. I know this is super early, but I want to see how it kind of morphs over time. So if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Comment below, who do you think is going to win the Premier League? Who do you think is getting relegated? Put out your list if you have the time. If you're feeling frisky, go for it and comment down below and let me know your entire list, and we could chat. Subscribe for more transfer news, Premier League, and footy content. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Sideline Sedo. Peace.